Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel stressed the importance of strengthening the country's legal framework during the closing of the ninth irregular session of the Cuban parliament. Hundreds rallied in Tunisia against President Kais Saied 3 days before a controversial vote on a new constitution. The government of Japan reported more than 200,000 cases of COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, an all-time high in that country. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We are beginning with the news. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel stressed the importance of strengthening the country's legal framework during the closing of the ninth regular session of the Cuban parliament. The cycle of assemblies concluded with the approval of a new family code, which will be submitted to popular consultation next September 25th. The president also gave an assessment of the action plan launched for the recovery of the Caribbean nations' electricity system. Díaz-Canel also highlighted the importance of the legislative period. Cuba's President Miguel Díaz-Canel closed the ninth ordinary session of the National Assembly of People's Power on Friday, where a new family code was approved and will be submitted to national referendum in September. In his closing speech, Díaz-Canel highlighted the constitutional basis of the rights of families.
The right of families today is based on a new constitutional and legislative order that focuses on families as a union of people linked by an effective social, sentimental relationship that binds them to a communion of life to support each other. We can speak of a code that recognizes the rights of all.
The Cuban president also referred in his speech to the U.S. Department's designation of Cuba as the state sponsor of terrorism and its implications on Cuba's economy.
The U.S. State Department has no way or basis to justify the designation of Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism. There is no U.S. politician or government official who can honestly sustain such an accusation. No one has been able to present credible evidence to support such a slander. The consequences of such a designation are markedly harmful to a small nation like ours. It greatly impairs international financial and commercial transactions. It hinders access to financial institutions and the possibilities of payments and credits. It imposes a stigma on our entities and institutions which find it extremely difficult to interact even with foreign entities with which for years they have maintained productive relations.
The Confederations of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador submitted to Parliament a request for impeachment proceedings against the Minister of Interior, Patricio Carrillo Rosero, for his alleged responsibility in the violation of human rights during the protest. The CONAI considered that the minister failed to comply with his functions and political responsibility by erroneously applying international protocols and standards on the progressive and differentiated use of public force during the demonstrations in June. According to the document introduced by the organization, the lawsuit against Carrillo submitted to the National Assembly by the Congressman Peter Fernando Calo is based on what is established by the Constitution regarding security. In Uruguay, an explosion was reported in an apartment building located in Montevideo, leaving 10 people injured, 3 of them in serious conditions. The explosion, which left several floors destroyed and other nearby buildings with their facades impacted, took place on Friday after 9 a.m. local time at Leyenda Patria and Hidalgo streets. The Minister of the Interior, Luis Alberto Heber, who attended the scene, said that the reason for the explosion was not known and that no one was missing. Heber reported that so far there are 3 people with serious injuries, 1 from carbon monoxide poisoning and a married couple with burns of between 40% and 80% of their bodies.
It's a disaster. We are really shocked by the level of the explosion. But luckily, we did not report any missing people. There was a scary moment when one of the people did not appear. But luckily, she appeared. She was an employee who works on the 3rd floor. And then we are very worried about the health of the 3 people who are badly burned today. One with 80% of her body burned, and we are in the hands of the doctors so that somehow they can take care of them. One of them is very complicated, and we hope there are no consequences.
Argentina's government suspended by decree the hiring of personnel in a significant part of the public sector. The decree, published Friday with the signatures of President Alberto Fernandez and some ministers, establishes in its consideration that it is appropriate to adopt these measures with a view to guarantee an efficient and responsible use of the national budget. Among the prohibition are the term of appointments in transitory plant, hiring for the rendering of autonomous professional services, and the hiring of personnel with or without a dependency relationship. The text also contemplates a series of exceptions that include the National Fire Management System, hospital professionals, penitentiary personnel, armed forces, and security forces. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. In Colombia, President-elect Gustavo Petro held a dialogue with a delegation sent by the President of the United States, Joe Biden, where they discussed climate change, peace, and the fight against drug trafficking. During the meeting, the President said that they discussed in depth several of the issues that could mean an agenda between Colombia and the United States in a common construction. For his part, the United States Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security, John Finner, who heads Washington's delegation, assured that the meeting was productive for both. Colombia is considered the main ally of the United States in the region, having recently officially joined the list of countries that are major allies of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. This Friday, the U.S. State Department sanctioned the former president of Paraguay, Horacio Cartes, for accusations of corruption during his presidency. The decision was announced on Twitter by the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, and announced almost simultaneously in Asunción by the ambassador of Washington in the country, Mark Ostfeld. The diplomat detailed that during his term, Cartes used the presidency to block an investigation into transnational crime involving his partner, whose identity he did not disclose, in a maneuver he said was designed to mitigate the former president's political and legal risks. Cartes governed the South American country between 2013 and 2018 for the conservative Colorado Party. Thousands of people gathered to parade through the streets of Berlin for the city's annual Pride celebration, also known as Christopher Street Day. The motto of the Christopher Street Day in 2022 is United in Love, against hate, war, and discrimination. Around 1 million people are expected to take part in the CSD demonstration. The first Christopher Street Day in Berlin took place on June 30th, 1979. Gay Pride was the motto under which 450 protesters took to the streets of West Berlin. Christopher Street Day is an annual European LGBTIQ+ celebration and demonstration held in various cities across Europe for the rights of LGBTQ+ people and against discrimination and exclusion. It is Germany's and Switzerland's counterpart to Gay Pride or Pride Parades. Austria calls their Pride Parade Rainbow Parade. The most prominent CSD events are Berlin Pride, CSD Hamburg. Russian, Turkish, Ukrainian, and UN delegations signed an agreement in Istanbul on securing Ukrainian grain exports. The signatories of the pact were Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, his Turkish counterpart Hulusi Akar, Ukrainian Infrastructure Minister Alexander Kubrakov, under the auspices of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Antonio Guterres for the United Nations. The agreement will guarantee the exports of grain stranded in Ukrainian Black Sea ports and was established this Friday in Istanbul. For this part, the Russian delegation specified that the agreement for the evacuation of the Ukrainian wheat is interrelated with the assistance of the UN in the supply of Russian food and fertilizers to the global market.
You have overcome obstacles and put aside differences to pave the way for an initiative that will serve the common interests of all. Promoting the welfare of humanity has been the driving force of these talks. The question has not been what is good for one side or the other, The focus has been on what matters most for the people of our world. And let there be no doubt, this is an agreement for the world. It will bring relief for developing countries on the edge of bankruptcy and the most vulnerable people on the edge of famine. And it will help stabilize global food prices, which were already at record levels even before the war, a true nightmare for developing countries.
In Iran, at least 21 people lost their lives due to heavy rains affecting the south of the country. According to the authorities, the heavy rains caused the Raubach River to swell in the pass that crosses the city of Estaban. Local rescuers managed to save the lives of at least 55 people who were trapped in the area. Meanwhile, rescue teams remain in the area searching for another 13 citizens reported missing. The Iran Meteorology Department had issued warnings about the possibility of heavy seasonal rainfall in the region, severely affected by climate change. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the south. Tunisian police used pepper spray to disperse protesters and arrested several demonstrators Friday as hundreds rally against President Kais Saied 3 days before a controversial vote on a new constitution. More than 300 people had gathered on Habib Bourguiba Avenue in central Tunis, surrounded by a heavy police presence with water cannons and riot gear. At least 10 demonstrators were arrested, according to 2 police sources. The protest came as Tunisians prepared to vote Monday on a draft constitution that would enshrine the vast powers that Said has exercised since he sacked the government and suspended parliament on June 25th last year. A police officer blamed the demonstrators for the unrest, saying they had been authorized to hold a protest on one part of the city center boulevard, but had purposely moved towards the ministry because they sought provocation. Hama Hamamani, head of the Left Workers' Party, vowed that Said's opponents would not give up. Japan's government approved proposal to release radioactive wastewater from Fukushima nuclear power plant into the ocean. The Asian country's nuclear regulatory authorities authorized the release of toxic water for next spring, a fact which caused people to take to the streets in opposition to the measure. The agency explained that the plan is that this wastewater, which contains radioactive tritium, will be discharged through an underwater tunnel into the sea to be treated later. For its part, the TEPCO company assured that it signed an agreement with the Fukushima prefecture and the cities that host the Okuma and Futaba plants, in which it assures that the discharge facilities will be constructed. In response to the national government's approval, citizens demonstrated in the nation's capital against dumping nuclear contaminated water into the ocean. Although the decision has a tangible effect on many people across the country, protesters say they were informed of the decision at very short notice. And the government of Japan reported more than 200,000 cases of COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, an all-time high in that country. According to local media, the island nation has registered this new record in the last few hours amid the 7th wave of infections in the country. In addition, the media pointed out that 17 of the 47 prefectures in the country have registered maximum daily cases of the coronavirus since the beginning of the pandemic. To date, Japan has detected some 11 million infections and more than 31,700 deaths, a number that has increased since the beginning of this month due to the high spread of the new subvariant BA.5 of the Omicron. In South Africa, Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara was received this Friday by his counterpart Cyril Ramaphosa in Pretoria, South Africa. This visit is the second stage of bilateral talks between the two heads of state. A joint commission established in 2015 has signed 9 memorandums of understandings in various sectors. Total trade between the two countries has increased from 1.3 billion rand in 2019 to 2 billion rand in 2021. Meaning more than $11 million. South Africa's investment portfolio in the Ivory Coast has also recorded an increase. Speaking during an official visit to South Africa, President Alassane Ouattara also voiced hopes for a rapid solution of a dispute which has strained relations with Mali. Ouattara said he has indicated to Ukraine's president his wish to see the supply of grain made a priority for the African continent. Cameroon's energy ministry has said that Western sanctions on Russia have raised the cost of fuel imports and caused fuel shortages in the African nation. Diesel fuel shortages this week stranded hundreds of trucks carrying goods to neighboring Central African Republic and Chad at the borders. The government has not disclosed the extent of the fuel shortage, but said it will import the necessary quantities from Africa and Europe. Another factor contributing to the rising prices and the elimination of the subsidy is the pressure from the International Monetary Fund, which is demanding austerity measures to authorize loans to this African country. And teleSUR English continues to grow. Its signal now reaches Europe. You can order from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on screen right now are in place since July 1st. Quite soon, further changes will be implemented for the signals in the Middle East and Africa. Now more than ever, the world connects to us and our stories are heard in other faraway nations. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and unfaithfulness to our audience. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.